It was also about the entire regime which the Americans wanted to take out.
Are the Iranians going to carry out their pledges, and are they going to continue with their attack?
Though Trump had said that the waves of attack would continue, but a new signal has come that there might be a small pause.
IRGC is likely to adopt lesser radical and more pragmatic approach to basically buy time so that the regime can survive.
There is much more than what is visible or to the naked eye.
Khamenei was killed because uranium enrichment and the Iranian desire to make a bomb.
That expertise is there. People know how to enrich it. There are infrastructure which can again be rebuilt.
Iran today is headless. There is transition, but conclusion is far away.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
A very good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. The big story we're tracking for you this Wednesday morning comes from US President Donald Trump, who claims victory in the war with Iran, going ahead and claiming that he's received a gift from Iran, which seems to be very significant. But the details, as always, remain elusive. Meanwhile, oil prices see massive correction after Trump defers strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure. Brent falls over 5% to under $95 a barrel. And of course, stock markets gear up for another green open, and commentary from the US suggests that the war in West Asia may be drawing to a close. All this and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. First up, a look at the headlines. US President Donald Trump says US has won the war as he hints at the Strait of Hormuz breakthrough and claims Iran is eager to strike a deal. Trump speaks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on West Asia crisis. Both stress keeping Strait of Hormuz open and push for de-escalation and peace. Meanwhile, Pakistan offers to host US-Iran talks as Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif backs diplomacy push despite uncertainty over ongoing negotiations. Oil prices correct sharply on Wednesday while global equities rise as US President Donald Trump sends a peace plan to Iran and Tehran signals it will allow non-hostile vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Drone strike a fuel tank at Kuwait International Airport, triggering massive fire as Iran continues attacks across the region in the nearly 4-week war. Rupee, meanwhile, hits an all-time low yet again at 93 rupees 76 paise against the US dollar as strong greenback, rising crude prices and West Asia tensions trigger outflows. US President Donald Trump gives complete and total endorsement to Hungary's Viktor Orbán, urging voters to return him to power in a high-stakes April election. OpenAI to shut down its Sora video generation app just months after launch as it pivots towards enterprise products ahead of a potential IPO. After Zomato, Swiggy hikes platform fee to 17 rupees 58 paise per order. This comes, remember, after the Zomato increase, making food delivery costlier amid rising fuel prices. US President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that Iran had made a major energy-related concession to the United States, calling it a significant development, though he did not specify any details. Trump suggested the move could be linked to the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial global oil transit route that has remained a key concern for Washington amid ongoing tensions. He further described the concession as a very big and valuable step, adding that it was related to oil and gas, not nuclear issues.
They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it, so that meant one thing to me: we're dealing with the right people.
Is that nuclear related?
No, it wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. The present, the gift they made to us was very significant, and they said they were going to do it, and it happened. And they're the only ones that could have done it. Jennifer?
Was it related to the Strait of Hormuz and the flow of...
Yeah, it was related to the flow and to the strait, yeah.
And Trump also indicated that the United States had already gained the upper hand in the conflict, even as military operations continue. Listening to the U.S. president once again.
Everything we're doing, we're making great. The border is great. The military is great. We're having, by the way, a tremendous success, as you know, in Iran. We had one in Venezuela, and now we're having one in Iran. They have no Navy left. They have no Air Force left. They have no anti-aircraft equipment left, no radar left, no leaders left. The leaders are all gone.
And Trump said that Washington is in talks with what he calls the right people in Iran, adding that Tehran is keen to reach a deal to end the hostilities in West Asia.
Nobody knows who to talk to, but we're actually talking to the right people, and they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal. Why do you say, what makes you trust? Do you think I trust them? I don't trust them.
Then why bother talking to them?
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal.
How hopeful are you that this peace deal will work out with Iran?
You're talking about to end it? Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. You know, I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump also spoke with Prime Minister Narendra Modi to discuss the escalating situation in West Asia. The conversation focused on regional stability, with both leaders underlining the critical importance of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. US Ambassador to India Sergio Gore said the two leaders exchanged views on the evolving crisis and stressed the need to ensure uninterrupted energy flows through the strategic waterway. Prime Minister Modi also confirmed the call in a post on X, describing it as a useful exchange of views on the situation in West Asia. He reiterated that India supports de-escalation and called for the restoration of peace at the earliest. Prime Minister Modi also emphasized that keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, secure and accessible is vital for global stability. Both leaders agreed to remain in touch as efforts continue towards ensuring peace and stability in the region. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Iran's ambassador to India, Dr. Mohammad Fatali, in New Delhi to discuss the ongoing conflict in West Asia. The meeting comes amid heightened tensions in the region and concerns over the safety of Indian nationals. In a post on X, Jaishankar said the two sides exchanged views on the evolving situation and regional developments. He also appreciated the support extended by Iranian authorities to Indians in Iran during these challenging times. And Pakistan has said it is ready to host talks between the US and Iran, even as conflicting claims emerge over whether negotiations are actually underway. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Tahir Andrabi told the media that Islamabad is willing to facilitate dialogue if both sides agree, reiterating Pakistan's long-standing position in favor of diplomacy to ensure peace and stability in the region. Shortly after, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif echoed the offer, saying Pakistan would be honoured to host meaningful and conclusive talks aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict. However, Iran has firmly denied that it is engaged in any negotiations with Washington, directly contradicting US President Donald Trump's recent claims. Now, despite the denial, multiple US and Israeli media reports suggest that countries including Pakistan, Egypt and Turkey are quietly acting as intermediaries between Washington and Tehran. Well, the Pentagon is considering deploying thousands of the 82nd Airborne troops as President Donald Trump signals both a possible increase in military action and a willingness to make a deal with Iran. Now, this would add to the large U.S. military presence already building up during the ongoing U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran. Officials say the plan could even include sending troops into Iranian territory, which would make the situation much worse. Here's more.
The Pentagon is expected to send thousands of soldiers to the Middle East from the U.S. Army's elite 82nd Airborne Division stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's according to two people familiar with the matter. It would add to a massive U.S. military buildup as the U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran continues. The move would expand options to include deployment of forces inside Iranian territory and could dramatically raise the stakes in the operation, which is already in its fourth week and has roiled global markets. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump on Tuesday continued to talk about a possible deal with Iran to end the war. Tehran denies the conversations have taken place.
We're in negotiations right now. They're doing it along with Marco, JD. We have a number of people doing it, and the other side, I can tell you, they'd like to make a deal.
He also said that Iran has made a major energy-related concession to the United States, describing it as a positive development, although he did not give details. Trump suggested the gift was related to the Strait of Hormuz, the oil transit waterway that the United States has struggled to keep open.
They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present. And the present arrived today. It was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money.
The war with Iran has taken a toll on Trump's popularity. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll shows Trump's approval rating has fallen to 36%, the lowest since he returned to the White House. Americans expressed widespread disapproval of the war as they deal with a surge in fuel prices. Only 29% of the country approves of Trump's economic stewardship, the lowest rating in either of Trump's presidential administrations, and lower than any economic approval rating of his predecessor, Democrat Joe Biden.
Now, Qatar Energy has now declared force majeure on some of its long-term LNG supply contracts, impacting customers in countries including Italy, Belgium, South Korea, as well as China. The move comes amid major production and supply disruptions triggered by the ongoing US-Israeli war with Iran. Force majeure allows companies to suspend contractual obligations due to unforeseen events, and similar steps have also been taken by petroleum firms in Kuwait and Bahrain. Global energy markets have been on edge since the conflict began, with Iran launching drone attacks targeting oil and gas infrastructure across the region. The disruption, remember, has raised serious concerns, with global energy prices surging as supply chains come under pressure. Now, global oil prices have corrected sharply on Wednesday morning, with Brent crude, the international benchmark, tumbling nearly 6% after US President Donald Trump sent a peace proposal to Iran amid the ongoing war. Brent was trading lower at $5.90, lower by 5.92% at just under $95 a barrel, while US benchmark WTI, or the West Texas Intermediate, fell over 5% to $87.72. The dip in oil comes as US President Donald Trump expressed optimism about ending the nearly month-long conflict, confirming he has sent a peace plan to Tehran. Iran, in turn, has indicated that non-hostile oil vessels will be allowed to pass through the crucial Strait of Hormuz. The sharp fall in oil follows a spike just a day earlier, as traders now turn cautious amid growing hopes of a negotiated end to the conflict. Now let's shift focus now to stories from the national capital. Delhi Chief Minister Rekha Gupta on Tuesday presented a 1.03 lakh crore rupee budget for FY27, outlining a mix of welfare schemes, infrastructure push, as well as green initiatives. Now, calling it a green budget, Rekha Gupta said 21% of the total outlay is focused on environmental protection, alongside plans to convert Delhi's entire public bus fleet to electric by the year 2029. Now, key welfare measures include free diagnostic tests for newborns under a new scheme, free bicycles for 1.3 lakh girl students, and laptops for meritorious students. The government has allocated 19,000 crore rupees for education and over 13,000 crore rupees for healthcare, while also expanding the Ayushman Bharat scheme to include transgender beneficiaries. A major announcement was the Mahila Samriddhi Yojana, under which eligible women will receive 2,500 rupees per month. On infrastructure, the budget includes fund for dust-free roads, new water pipelines, and an emergency operations center for disaster management. The government also unveiled plans for a new semiconductor policy to boost industry growth.
इस सदन के समक्ष इस वित्तीय वर्ष के बजट अनुमान को प्रस्तुत करना चाहती हूं। वर्ष 2026-27 का बजट अनुमान। और आपको ये जान के प्रसन्नता होगी कि मैं वित्तीय वर्ष 2026-27 के लिए 1,03,700 करोड़ रुपए का बजट एस्टीमेट प्रस्तुत करती हूं। 1,03,700 करोड़ रुपए। पिछली बार से भी ज्यादा बजट इस साल हमने दिल्ली के विकास के लिए रखा है। जब होली पे हमने 128 करोड़ की सीधा डीबीटी करी, किसी को चक्कर नहीं लगवाया कि आओ सिलेंडर लेके जाओ। और खाली सिलेंडर वालों को नहीं अध्यक्ष जी, जिसके यहाँ पाइपलाइन थी उसको भी दिया। 17.5 लाख परिवारों के लिए हमने होली के त्योहार पे सिलेंडर की वैल्यू के 853 रुपए उनके खातों में भिजवा दिए थे। और इस साल भी हमने 260 करोड़ रुपए का फंड रखा है होली और दिवाली पे एक एक सिलेंडर दिल्ली की बहनों को, दिल्ली के परिवारों को देने के लिए। हम अध्यक्ष जी, आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में दिल्ली में सेमीकंडक्टर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट इकोसिस्टम, ये सब करना चाहते हैं। और इसी के लिए हम दिल्ली में सेमीकंडक्टर पॉलिसी लेकर के आने वाले हैं, ताकि दिल्ली में भी एक बेहतर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप हो, ताकि सेमीकंडक्टर इंडस्ट्रीज यहां पर आके काम कर सके।
All right, moving on now. Food delivery platform Swiggy has raised its platform fee to 17 rupees 58 paisa per order just days after rival Zomato increased its charges. Now, this is the first hike by Swiggy since September last year and brings its fees in line with Zomato's at around the same level after taxes. Zomato had earlier increased its platform fee to 14 rupees 90 paisa per order on a pre-GST basis. Now, platform fees are fixed charges added on every order over and above delivery and restaurant costs and are used to cover operational and technology expenses. The increase comes at a time when rising crude oil prices driven by the West Asia conflict are pushing up delivery and logistics costs. And time for a very short break. When we come back, Gaurang Shah will be here to tell us what the mood of investors on the Lal Street is and what to expect in days ahead, especially as mixed signals emerge on the crisis in West Asia. That on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
Sir, what do you think?
तुम नहीं समझोगे।
The new Skoda Kushaq. Easy to love. Skoda.
The LPG shortage is now being felt across several cities in India. Our reporters travel across the country to bring you the ground reality.
It's impacting your and my kitchen.
Gas crisis hits kitchen fires. Restaurants and small businesses shutting down.
Very difficult because everything runs on LPG.
LPG cylinders are running short.
Supply shortage, hoarding or panic buying.
कहाँ भी कोई भी 3000 दे तुरंत सिलेंडर मिलेगा.
What's the government doing to control the crisis?
So the question is whether India is prepared.
News9 ground reports.
Growing uncertainty over the availability of LPG in the national capital.
We are here at the ground. News9 will be tracking the problems of the people.
But the people that we spoke to on ground have a different story to tell.
Will be continuous coverage.
Continuous coverage on News9 in your interest.
Back, you're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News9. Time now to take a look at the stock markets. There's a positive green start to the Indian stock markets. We'll come to that in just a bit. But first up, how the US markets performed. Well, Wall Street indices closed lower in a high volatile session on Tuesday as investors remain torn between fears of rising oil prices and hopes of a possible diplomatic breakthrough in the US-Israeli war on Iran. Now, the mixed signals between diplomatic optimism and military build-up in West Asia have kept investors on the edge, driving sharp swings across Wall Street indices through the trading session. Take a look.
Wall Street's main stock indexes ended lower after a volatile session on Tuesday, with the Dow dropping almost 0.2%, the S&P 500 shedding nearly 0.4%, and the Nasdaq losing more than 0.8%. Investors swayed between fears of rising oil prices and hopes for a resolution to the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran.
Well, the ugly word of uncertainty is back.
Robert Conzo is CEO and Managing Director of the Wealth Alliance.
It's back in a big way, and you're seeing it come out in many different markets in many different ways. And why is it? Because volatility amongst many different data points is at a real high. And it all starts with the one that you've heard, oil, oil, and more oil. All right, so you have oil prices jumping.
Crude oil futures settled up more than 4% as reports suggested that more American troops were headed to the Middle East, and with Iran contradicting President Donald Trump's claim that it had held talks with the U.S. to end the war. Among the 11 S&P 500 major industry sectors, energy led gains during the session, while communication services and technology led losses. Among individual movers, shares of Jefferies rose 2.5% after the Financial Times reported that Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group is working on plans for a possible takeover of the investment bank. And shares of cosmetics maker Estee Lauder tumbled nearly 10% after the company said it was in talks for a potential merger with Spanish beauty group Puig Brands.
All right, and now let's take a quick look at Asian markets, which have all opened higher this Wednesday morning, and of course all taking cues from the ebbing of situation in the West Asia, especially promises coming that the Strait of Hormuz may be open for oil vessels to pass through. As things stand since morning, Nikkei 225, Japan's benchmark, is up again 2.3%, and Taiwan's TAIEX is also up about 2.7% or so in trade. Meanwhile, South Korea's Kospi also up 2.25%. The Shanghai Composite Index up more than 1%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng also in the green this morning, all on hopes of the correction that we are seeing in the crude oil prices likely to continue. At least that's what the hope seems to be in Asian markets. Let's take a look at the Indian stock markets, which have once again opened with one would call a gap up. In fact, it was more than a gap up as the markets opened at 9:15, but a little bit of profit selling seen in the first 5 minutes of trading. Right now, the Sensex is up about a percentage point to about 74,800 odd points. Meanwhile, The Nifty 50 also up more than 1%, up by about 240 points in the range of about 23,150. Similar sentiment visible across the mid-cap and the small-cap space. But look at the volatility index. The swings that you're seeing on stock markets seem to be fairly drastic, with the India VIX now at levels of about 25. Well, Gaurang Shah, Senior Vice President, Geojit Financial Services, is here to decode what this sentiment in the investors' mood really means. Gaurang, thank you so much for your time and for joining us here on News 9. Always a pleasure. My first question to you is India VIX now at levels of about 25. I mean, we are seeing this day-to-day basis, but what do these wild swings really mean for investors?
Thank you so much, Karthik, for having me on the show this morning. Good morning to all your viewers and to you and your entire team. A small disclosure: all recommendations that I'll be sharing with you this morning are a part of our fundamental research team recommendations from a long-term point of view. Our company, Geojit, or myself, we do not have any kind of personal investments, no financial interest, no conflict of interest, but we share similar ideas with our clients. They might have their investment interests. So to answer your question, this will be more today, Karthik, because yesterday was weekly expiry and today, if I'm not mistaken, is the monthly expiry, because tomorrow is a holiday on account of Xiaomi. Now, whenever we have seen, expiry day volatility, it has always been elevated, specifically with this time, because you have India VIX at 25, though it has cooled off from the higher levels that we saw earlier, but it is not reasonably down. And my sense is that this being a truncated week also, because like I mentioned, tomorrow's holiday will come back for trade on Friday. And then Friday also, I don't think anything major is going to happen, because then the day after, that is on Saturday, is the last day of the so-called ceasefire, 5-day ceasefire announced by President Trump.
Right.
So this is going to be choppy and volatile, but for investors, I think it's a great time to cherry pick some strong fundamental stocks.
All right. So in addition to the expiry of the Sensex monthly contracts, are we also looking at some positive sentiment built up on way of, by way of, in fact, the oil prices correcting? So is there hope that perhaps, these reduced oil prices in the range of about $95 a barrel are likely to continue?
Well, it should definitely head downwards. It is still elevated according to our Indian crude oil basket, Karthik.
Yeah.
If you actually, and Indian crude oil basket is still at a very elevated
$150
level.
or so, I think, is what India is paying for a barrel of crude.
Yeah, this is after a all-time new high yesterday of 157. Karthik.
That's right.
Dollars a barrel, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not rupees. So,
dollars.
and more importantly, I think unless and until we see a resolution of de-escalation, not from President Trump, because we know the kind of statements he makes on his the social media handle and the kind of shifting of goal from the time this unfortunate geopolitical situation started from 12th. It started with regime change, then it went to new nuclearization, then it went to something else, etc., etc. So unless and until there is a statement from Iran, and unless and until we see something in absolute solid black and white, to trust President Trump is something that you want to take a risk. Let us wait and watch. Iran has, on the other side, even yesterday, fired missiles at Israel, and Israel has fired missiles on Iran. So it's not like everything is hunky-dory and peace over there. Missiles are still flying around on each other's as far as Iran and Israel are concerned. So we'll have to wait out. Choppiness and volatility will be there. We did recover from those 22,000 levels to 23,000 plus levels where we are trading right now, Karthik. Let's hope and pray that volatility index comes down, and along with that, we have a reasonable amount of downward correction in crude and natural gas prices. And this will only happen if there is some decisive statement from the respective countries.
Absolutely. Well, and that clarity is what everybody is awaiting, and not just market participants. Meanwhile, I want to touch upon two stocks specifically with you this morning, Gaurang. First, of course, happens to be Reliance Industries, which is now getting as many as $5 million worth of Iranian oil. And this is something which is 5 million barrels, in fact, of Iranian oil. And this is obviously in the context of the sanctions temporarily lifted on the barrels already at sea. What does this mean for Reliance Industries?
So all those, floating oil on the vessels in the high seas, whether it is Iranian or Russian, India has been able to quite a bit of it. And in fact, certain vessels which are heading towards China, we managed to divert Russian crude, I'm talking about, Karthik, towards Indian ports. And yesterday and day before yesterday, we had some positive news flows about some vessels carrying Indian flag have been able to safely pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and now they are headed towards different ports in India. We need to, Indian government, as it was, elaborately stated by the Honorable Prime Minister in Parliament day before yesterday, and we had some statements yesterday also. I think securing our energy is the topmost priority, and that's what the government has spoken about. The problem is at what price, Karthik? As of now, it is elevated, and I think as and when situation de-escalates, we will have a reasonable correction in crude oil and natural gas prices. My belief is that Reliance Industries has been on our radar. Again, as a disclosure, we've been positive on Reliance Industries for a pretty long period of time. And there is one more company that I would like to add to this particular question of yours, is L&T.
Okay.
From the time the war broke out, Karthik, L&T has been down and out, touched levels of 32 or 3,300, and then it has recovered.
Right.
And I think it's a screaming buy, to be very honest with you. The valuations are extremely, extremely mouth-watering from a long-term point of view.
All right, so L&T added to the list of recommendations here by Gaurang Shah. Gaurang, I also want to talk about the HDFC Bank stock. We saw a massive rebound yesterday, and even this morning things are looking quite pretty. In fact, for HDFC Bank, the stock is about 2.5% or so up. Is it fair to assume at this moment that perhaps the worst is behind us for now, at least as far as HDFC Bank stock is concerned?
So the part-time chairman resignation, Atanu Chakraborty, came in as a shock. Then there was a wilder shock, Karthik, in terms of mis-selling of certain products by some 3 individuals.
That's right.
At a decent level. When all this negative news broke out, when the stock of HDFC Bank was trading at 52-week low.
Yeah.
And then because of this news flow, we saw further pressure towards 730 or 740. I don't remember exactly what the low was. And then the recovery, then the statement from the HDFC Bank management. And of course, we had clarity from the RBI governor also coming in.
Yeah.
So, primarily speaking, Karthik, look, this is not going to have any major negative impact on the earnings of the company.
Okay.
Of the bank. Let us be very, very clear.
Okay.
And being a largest top pick in the private sector bank, we are extremely positive. So this is what the third investment idea, Karthik, if you will, from a long-term point of view, which is available at reasonable valuation, and risk reward is also favorable.
All right. Okay. Meanwhile, I also want to talk about, retail investors not looking specifically at stocks, but looking at indices and looking at their returns pretty much erode ever since the break of 2026. I will pull up those graphics also and help our investors sort of make informed decisions on how they should read these numbers, because over the last 2 months or so, Nifty 50 is down about 12.5%. Nifty oil and gas trading again exactly at the same decline levels. Nifty auto is down much higher at about 14%. Nifty bank is down about 12%. Nifty IT, the worst hit, down about 22.5%. The small cap, mid cap also battered. So overall, investors who are just looking at these benchmark indices, looking at these signals emerge from from the trading screens that they follow, what should they make of their sort of losses, their wealth erosion, and how long before they're able to at least recoup, if not make a killing?
So if I have to put it in absolute terms, Karthik, forget about short-term pain and think about long-term gains.
Okay.
Last year, we saw a return of higher single digit of close to about 9% on the Sensex and Nifty. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this year, since beginning, we had a little bit of issue. And then, of course, this unfortunate event unfolding. So, I mean, if you are a long-term investor, don't track your portfolio every week, every month. Leave it for some time.
How do you not do that?
No, honestly, Karthik, because it will trouble you. And maybe in that kind of a frustration state of mind, you may end up taking a decision that let me exit.
Okay.
And that will be the level where the markets will rebound. Right. And it has happened. I have number of cases, Karthik, during COVID time, when people have sold out at the bottom and they've repented. So looking at long term, don't take a decision on your long term portfolio for a situation or an event which is going to get resolved in the next maybe 2 or 3 months. I'm assuming it.
Okay.
I hope it becomes sooner. I'm talking about the situation in the Middle East. So don't take, in fact, I would, and honestly, Karthik, I don't I won't shy away from saying this on your channels that I have not stopped my SIPs.
Okay.
My SIPs are still continuing.
Have you increased your SIPs, and is that something you would suggest people with some liquidity to do as well? Is this the dip to actually increase your SIPs?
So I was just going to say that, Karthik.
Okay.
So my SIPs, there are about four or five odd SIPs that are getting debited from my savings bank account.
Okay.
I did not stop it when this 28th Feb war broke out. I did not stop my SIPs during Russia-Ukraine. I did not stop my SIPs during Israel-Hamas.
Okay.
I did not stop my SIPs during COVID timers.
All right.
And as and when there is surplus balance available in my savings bank account, I have done a lump sum investment also.
All right.
And this is a blanket disclosure that I want to give. So don't stop your SIPs. These are the times wherein instead of pulling out from the market, try to get in a little bit by allocating a little bit more capital in fundamentally sound stocks. If you can understand equity, do it directly. If you can't understand equity, use a fantastic product like mutual fund SIPs, which I have been doing it over the last many years, and I have no complaints.
All right, Gaurang, sound advice coming there for all investors looking at their fintech apps every morning and seeing how much wealth has been eroded. Stop doing that. Think long term, and if you have the money, pour it in. That's the word coming in from Gaurang Shah. Gaurang, always a pleasure having you here with us on News9. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, we will slip into another very short break. A lot more coming up on the other side. You're watching News9.
खेलता है झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया
Volkswagen.
What you saw me on the field and off the field is like chalk and cheese.
No guts, no glory, no pain, no gain.
My tendency is to go for magic, not for perfection.
I never give up. I like to win.
Just me being here, it's a statement.
When chips are down, the whole team could have looked up to you, said, Dada is still there.
Every time, whether I scored 100 or a Sachin scored 100 or a Rahul scored 100, the scoreboard said India won.
Let the kids know and the families know that one of the best ways to get a good education, go to a good school and a good college anywhere in the world is if you play a sport well.
There is a quality about me, which is why perhaps people feel I'm a perfectionist, because I don't get tired easily.
In Germany, the biggest newspaper was written on the first page. This is a finishing from Lothar Matthäus' career, and this was motivating me.
I was literally on my phone at home, and they're like, "Oh, we have the results. We suggest that you remove your breasts." And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Welcome back. You're still watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Well, moving on, the ongoing war in Iran is now hitting closer to home in the United States, with a sharp surge in fuel prices putting significant financial pressure on small businesses. From transport to logistics, rising fuel costs are squeezing margins, forcing many small operators to either absorb losses or pass on the burden to customers. Take a look.
A surge in fuel prices from the war in Iran has forced this Virginia moving company to rethink its business or risk losing it.
As soon as we saw that the gas was going up, it starts affecting us right away.
Robin Bolt is the co-owner of Express Moving and Storage. He says a cross-country moving job was much more affordable before the war began. Filling up a moving truck used to cost about $250, and now, he says, it's closer to $300.
We either need to just not accept it, or we are going to have to raise that rate. We're always very hesitant to raise the rates because it's very competitive in this area with moving companies. If we raise our rates, we risk losing jobs.
Bolt says rising diesel costs are also complicating quotes for a job, which are sometimes made months in advance.
we're giving a quote based on our costs right now. And if diesel continues to go up, we can't change our price. And so our margins become thinner and thinner, and that is a strain on us.
Fuel price spikes have been one of the most immediate economic consequences of the war when the U.S. and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran. With no clear end in sight, Bolt says he's focusing on optimizing routes and combining loads for long-distance jobs to offset the rising costs.
If it doesn't stop, we'll just have to become more efficient. If we don't raise rates, obviously our profit margin gets squeezed. So eventually we might find ourselves raising our rates, but right now we're just trying to hold strong.
And well, the economic impact of the Iran war is now clearly visible in Europe too, with Eurozone private sector growth nearly coming to a standstill this month. Latest business surveys show activity slowing sharply as inflation expectations surge and delivery times lengthen, pointing to deepening supply chain disruptions.
Eurozone private sector growth nearly stalled this month as inflation expectations surged and delivery times soared. It adds to growing evidence the bloc is already suffering a drag from the US and Israeli war with Iran. With oil prices up by 2/3 since the start of the year and shipping held up in a key transport corridor, Eurozone inflation is already rising. And economic growth is set to take a hit as expensive fuel saps household purchasing power. The S&P Eurozone Purchasing Managers Index fell to a 10-month low of 50.5 in March. It hovered just above the 50 mark, separating growth from contraction. The index for manufacturing prices jumped to 68.6 from 58. That's as the delivery times index plunged to 40.9 and suggests firms anticipate massive delays and a surge in prices. German figures held up relatively well, but other major economies took a bigger hit, including France, where business confidence tumbled. Separate data a day earlier showed consumer confidence in the bloc falling to its lowest level since late 2023. Trade data released last week showed sharp falls in European exports at the start of the year, having been buffeted by President Donald Trump's erratic tariffs announcements. Meanwhile, petrol prices have risen by more than 10% across the EU, and diesel is up over 20%. Even if the war is ended relatively soon, these prices are unlikely to fall quickly, as some energy infrastructure is damaged and fuel bottlenecks may take several months to resolve.
Staying with more stories from Europe, new car sales across the continent have rebounded in February after witnessing a drop in Jan, signaling a recovery in the region's auto market, at least before the war in West Asia broke out. Now, Elon Musk's all-electric car maker Tesla has also returned to growth, marking its first expansion since December 2024, according to official data released on Tuesday.
New car sales in Europe rose in February after falling in January, and sustained demand for electric vehicles helped Tesla achieve growth for the first time since 2024. Data from the European auto lobby, the ACEA, showed overall car registrations, a proxy for sales, in the EU, Britain and the European Free Trade Association were up 1.7%. Over 979,000 cars were sold in the month, 2/3 of those being electric or hybrid. The EU and Britain are walking back some regulations aimed at reducing CO2 emissions. That's after pressure from domestic car makers, who say they're struggling to turn a profit from EV sales, while facing competition from Chinese rivals. But battery electric and plug-in hybrid sales have been steadily on the rise in Europe, thanks to new, cheaper models. The data showed Tesla's February registrations were up 11.8% year-on-year. They were marginally lower than those of its Chinese competitor BYD, whose sales more than doubled from the same month of 2025. Sales of top domestic car makers VW and Stellantis rose by 2.2% and 9.5% respectively, while Renault's fell by 14.3%.
And moving on now, in a major shift in its lunar strategy, NASA has scrapped plans to deploy a space station in the orbit around the moon. Instead, the agency will now focus on building a permanent base on the lunar surface with an estimated cost of $20 billion over the next 7 years.
America will never again give up the moon.
NASA is canceling plans to deploy a largely built space station meant to orbit the moon, and will instead use the components to construct a $20 billion base on the moon's surface over the next 7 years. New Chief Jared Isaacman announced the changes to NASA's flagship moon program called Artemis during a day-long event at NASA's Washington headquarters on Tuesday.
Despite some of the very real hardware and schedule challenges, we can repurpose equipment and international partner commitments to support surface and other program objectives.
The Lunar Gateway Station was intended to be parked in a lunar orbit. It was designed to serve as both a research platform and a transfer station, where astronauts could board the moon landers before descending to the lunar surface. The changes imposed by Isaacman in recent weeks are reshaping billions of dollars worth of contracts under the Artemis effort. As China races towards its own moon landing, companies are now scrambling to accommodate the extra urgency.
NASA has stated we will return Americans to the moon before the end of President Trump's term. Our great competitor said before 2030. The difference between success and failure will be measured in months, not years. They may be early, and recent history suggests we might be late.
On to corporate China now. Xiaomi has reported a drop in quarterly profit, marking its first decline in 3 years as the Chinese tech giant grapples with rising costs and intensifying competition. The latest numbers highlight the challenges facing Xiaomi as it expands its footprint in the EV space while defending its position in the highly competitive smartphone market.
Xiaomi's quarterly profit fell for the first time in 3 years at the end of last year. That's according to the Chinese firm on Tuesday. The smartphone and electric vehicle giant faced rising costs and growing competition. Adjusted net profit for the quarter to the end of December fell to $914.5 million. It marked the first quarterly drop since 2022's fourth quarter, though it was still higher than analyst forecasts. Xiaomi said Q4 revenue came in at close to $17 billion, slightly above average estimates. Profit was up just under 44% for the whole year at $5.6 billion after a 25% rise in revenue. Xiaomi beat its delivery target of 350,000 EVs last year. However, global smartphone shipments hit 165.2 million units in 2025, which missed targets. Looking ahead, Xiaomi said price hikes might be needed if the phone continues to face pressure from rising memory costs. The company added the memory cost rise was higher than first thought.
Time for a very short break now. When we come back, an exclusive perspective on India's ethanol story coming up right from the TV9 What India Thinks Today summit.
खेलता है झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया
Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles. Truck cabin safety is a decision made at the design stage. We study Indian accident data, simulate thousands of crashes digitally and design our cabins that preserve driver survival space. That's why our entire trucks range now meets the gold standard of truck cabin safety, ECE R29.03 European safety norms. But we did not just stop there. We tested our trucks to replicate the real-world crash scenario. Truck versus truck, reality versus reality. Because real safety is only tested and delivered at the moment of impact. Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles. Designing, testing and leading the future of trucking with safety at its core.
It's confirmed. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been eliminated. But it was just not about Khamenei. It was also about the entire regime which the Americans wanted to take out.
Are the Iranians going to carry out their pledges, and are they going to continue with their attack?
Though Trump had said that the waves of attack would continue, but a new signal has come that there might be a small pause.
IRGC is likely to adopt lesser radical and more pragmatic approach to basically buy time so that the regime can survive.
There is much more than what is visible or to the naked eye.
Khamenei was killed because uranium enrichment and the Iranian desire to make a bomb.
That expertise is there. People know how to enrich it. There are infrastructure which can again be rebuilt.
Iran today is headless. There is transition, but conclusion is far away.
Welcome back. You're watching Long Brief at 9 and now on to a special interaction at the TV9 What India Thinks Today Summit. Well, is ethanol blending the answer to India's rising fuel shocks, and can new technology solve the fuel versus food debate? Of course, from lessons in Brazil's flex fuel shift to a key question, should petrol actually get cheaper with ethanol blending? Well, earlier I spoke to Praveen Parapati, chairman of Swachh Bio Solutions, on the sidelines of the TV9 network What India Thinks Today Summit, and began by asking him how Swachh Bio's new technology can solve for India's ethanol conundrum. Take a listen in.
Yeah, basically the technology we are using is to take agricultural residue, that is not the crops, but whatever is left over after the crops, and then you break that down into producing sugars and then producing ethanol from there. It's a harder problem to solve, and many have been working at it, and I think there are some initial implementations that at Panipat, and BPCL is doing one at Odisha. But we think we have a better solution in place, and it will work on rice straw, or it will work on corn stalk, it will work on sugarcane bagasse, and it will also work on some energy crops that can be grown to a much larger extent.
All right, and talk to us about the fuel versus food debate. And I think forever the conversation has been around the fact that if you prioritize the fuel-based production at a farm level, then perhaps food scarcity could be another problem that hits us. But in your technology, that problem already seems to be solved, isn't it?
It's largely solved in the sense, if we use the remaining material, you can meet about 50 to 60% of the petroleum needs of the country. If we actually do something, you replace some part of the food, but right now we have about 25% excess rice being produced. Okay? And rice cultivation is very intense. Needs a lot of water, needs a lot of inputs and things like that. And state governments or the central government is buying that, and then it sits in the godown, gets damaged. Okay? So if we convert 5% or 10% of that land to grow energy crop, okay, then suddenly you have enough biomass to replace all the diesel, all the petroleum, and produce all the SAF you need. So essentially you can become completely self-sufficient.
All right, and given all that we are seeing in West Asia, given the predictions being made about oil prices rising, the potential scarcity of petroleum products for the world, not just for India, do you think there is a reason for the government now to sort of rebalance its priorities and really ensure that flex fuel becomes mainstay for India's automotive industry?
Absolutely, I'm hopeful that this incentivizes everybody. I think both India and other countries will start looking at their resources and saying, how can we be more self-sufficient, self-reliant? What we have seen initially with COVID and now with this war is supply chains are a little bit more brittle than we thought. And so building this capability, and especially if it's an import and you're importing 150 billion to 200 billion every year, and can actually change it so more of it can stay in the country, will make a huge change. And I hope they're paying attention.
Talk to us about how do we incentivize flex fuels for consumers. For the OEMs, of course, there is going to be a cost advantage because the input cost is now coming cheaper with the flex fuels built in, ethanol built in. But for the consumers, is there need for the government to incentivize flex fuels? Because the E20 is going to pretty much cost the same as a regular liter of petrol. So with E20 and potentially higher variants of ethanol being blended, is there a reason for the government and a case for the government to incentivize the end consumers with cheaper petrol pump prices?
I think as long as there's a distinction in the price between the ethanol blend ones and just pure hydrocarbons, the consumer will gravitate towards the ones that are less costly. How the government does it, I'll leave that one to their imagination. But you can either increase the cost, or you can give the tax subsidy, or do something else in between. Okay, but I think it is a good way to try to incentivize more of the customers to do the right thing. And so basically, the less they use of pure gasoline, the less they are polluting, and the better off everybody is. The globe is better, the country is better. Delhi, you can literally feel it every time. So using higher blends and starting to think about using some types of blends even in diesel will make a huge difference.
But altruism aside, sir, caring for the environment and doing the green pivot aside, there are also concerns about whether the engines are tuned up to accommodate the flex fuel, and is there going to be a loss of power? Is there going to be more maintenance required for engines? And will certain engines, especially the Bharat 4, Bharat 5 engines, will they be able to take this ethanol mix? Are those concerns of consumers valid?
Not to any significant extent. We see E85 vehicles in US all the time, okay, and they're running fairly well. And in Brazil, you see even ability at a gas station for the consumer to just dial what level of mixing they want, okay, and they're all working fine. India, I don't believe, is so much behind in terms of building these vehicles, okay. From what I remember, I think in about 2010, 2011, 2012 time frame, India had announced growing to 10% or greater. So if you started making vehicles that are capable of handling 10% and greater, by now most of the things are addressed. The change to flex fuel is a minor change, as long as at least those changes that have been announced since 2012 have been taken care of.
All right, let's leave it at that. Mr. Praveen Parapati, a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया.
What you saw me on the field and off the field is like chalk and cheese.
No guts, no glory, no pain, no gain.
My tendency is to go for magic, not for perfection.
I never give up. I like to win.
Just me being here, it's a statement.
When chips are down, the whole team could have looked up to you, said, Dada is still there.
Every time, whether I scored 100 or a Sachin scored 100 or a Rahul scored 100, the scoreboard said